On a pain scale of 0 to 10, the average person in this study started at 3.5 for neck and shoulder pain and 2.8 for low back pain. These were adults in their mid-40s with physically demanding jobs, the kind of people who had spent years treating chronic aches as an occupational inevitability rather than a problem worth solving. Pain was not a warning sign to them. It was just Tuesday. Researchers split that group in half and assigned one half to kettlebell training 3 times a week for 8 weeks, while the other half changed nothing. By the end, the training group had dropped their neck and shoulder pain by 2.1 points and their low back pain by 1.4 points compared to the people who did nothing. Trunk extensor strength climbed, posture changed, and the exercise driving most of those results was a single movement, the kettlebell swing. 6 exercises are covered in this program: the swing, the goblet squat, the clean and press, the Turkish get-up, the snatch, and the rower, each chosen to fill a specific gap the others leave behind. No overlap, no filler, and every one of them backed by research you can actually look up. Exercise number 1, the kettlebell swing. The swing is the foundation everything else in this program builds on, and why it earned that position comes down to what researchers actually found when they examined it in a laboratory setting. Dr. Stuart McGill ran what was among the first rigorous lab examinations of kettlebell exercises in 2012, using EMG sensors and a 16-kilogram kettlebell to record exactly what the body does during a swing. Gluteus maximus activation hit 76% of maximum voluntary contraction, and the low back extensors fired at around 50%. Those numbers alone carry weight. But here's the thing: the most revealing finding had nothing to do with activation percentages at all. It was about the direction of force traveling through the spine. During a conventional deadlift or barbell squat, the lower vertebrae experience anterior shear force, where the top vertebra wants to slide forward on the one beneath it, and that pattern compounds over years of heavy lifting in ways that wear down spinal tissue. The swing produced the opposite loading direction. McGill recorded a posterior shear pattern at the L4 to L5 segment, meaning the force was essentially reversed compared to what traditional lifts create, and that mechanical difference goes a long way toward explaining why people who start swinging often report that their back pain fades instead of worsening. McGill himself acknowledged this finding, explains why so many individuals credit the swing with restoring back health, while also noting that a small number of people with specific shear load intolerance may find the movement irritating rather than restorative. The hamstrings tell a different story. Zebes and colleagues tested elite female athletes on the kettlebell swing and measured semitendinosus activation, reaching 73 to 115% of maximum voluntary contraction. And that range matters because the semitendinosus is one of the primary muscles preventing the knee from caving inward during explosive movement. Their conclusion was that the swing carries direct implications for knee injury prevention, which means this is not purely a hip exercise dressed up in conditioning clothes. Layer the cardiovascular numbers on top of all that, and the picture becomes even clearer. A 2010 study had subjects swing continuously for 12 minutes with a 16-kilogram bell. An average heart rate landed at 86.8% of maximum, while oxygen consumption sat at 65% of VO2 max, which falls squarely within the ACSM's guidelines for improving cardiovascular fitness. Glutes, hamstrings, lower back, and heart rate. One movement, one bell, one relatively small patch of floor. The swing is difficult to argue with, but it only trains the hip hinge, and your legs need loading from a completely different direction. Number 2, the goblet squat. Hinging alone leaves your quadriceps almost entirely untouched, your squat depth undeveloped, and your hip flexors perpetually shortened from hours of sitting without ever getting stretched under load. The goblet squat addresses all 3 of those problems by changing where the weight lives relative to your torso. A kettlebell held at chest height forces your upper body upright and shifts the mechanics of the squat in ways a barbell on your back simply cannot produce. Research from the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research found that front-loaded squats generate greater hip and knee flexion than back squats at matched loads, so you naturally descend deeper without forcing it, which means more muscle fibers recruited through a longer range of motion. A separate study in the Journal of Sports Medicine and Physical Fitness found that front-loaded squat variations also reduce both compressive and shear forces on the lower back compared to back. Squatting, and that combination, harder on the legs, easier on the spine, is genuinely difficult to replicate with conventional squat variations. Calling this a leg exercise, though, undersells what actually happens during a set. The moment that bell makes contact with your chest and you begin to descend, your core braces to stop you from folding forward, your upper back fights to stay extended against the forward pull of the weight, and your forearms maintain constant tension throughout every rep. A 2024 review in Curis confirmed that the goblet squat simultaneously recruits the hip, thigh, core, and abdominal muscles while improving lower limb alignment and reducing injury risk. And that is a meaningful list for a movement most people treat as a beginner drill. And that's where the coaching value comes in. The bell held in front of your body creates a counterbalance that lets your hips drop between your knees without pitching you backward, which is the exact mechanical problem that causes most beginners to struggle with squatting in the first place. People who have fought their body weight squat for years often descend noticeably deeper on their first goblet squat rep, not because they suddenly got more mobile, but because the shifted center of gravity corrects their mechanics automatically. That self-correcting property is why coaches at every level keep it in rotation, regardless of how experienced their athletes are. 2 movement patterns are now covered. The swing handles the hinge, the goblet squat handles the squat, but nothing in this program has gone overhead yet, and overhead pressing places demands on the shoulders, core, and coordination that neither of those movements touches. Exercise 3, the clean and press. The clean and press connects a hip-driven clean directly into an overhead press in one continuous sequence, making it the closest thing this program has to a full-body strength exercise in a single movement. You hinge, drive, the bell upward, guided into the rack position against your chest, then press to full lockout, and in that sequence your hamstrings, glutes, core, forearms, shoulders, and triceps all contribute within a matter of seconds. What separates the kettlebell version from a standard dumbbell press is the offset center of gravity, where the mass sits behind your hand rather than distributed evenly on both sides of it. A 2022 study published in PMC put the kettlebell overhead pressed directly against a dumbbell press at matched loads, and muscle activity for every tested muscle, except the upper trapezius, came out consistently higher with the kettlebell. The offset load demands more from the rotator cuff and scapular stabilizers throughout what looks, from the outside, like a fairly ordinary pressing movement. The strength credentials of the clean and press were tested directly against barbell training in a 2012 6-week controlled study by Otto and colleagues, where a kettlebell training group went head-to-head against a group performing barbell cleans and back squats. Both groups improved strength and power by comparable amounts, which meant the kettlebell program matched outcomes from barbell training with decades of competitive use behind it. This is not a scaled-down substitute for people without gym access. It is a legitimate strength builder that earned that label in a controlled comparison. The rotational demand deserves mention too. During the clean, the asymmetric load fires the obliques and deep spinal stabilizers to resist the torque trying to twist your torso as the bell travels upward. And McGill and Marshall included the clean and press in their 2012 analysis alongside swings and snatches as a movement requiring coordinated trunk stiffness from start to finish. 3 patterns are now covered: hinge, squat, press, but none of the exercises so far reveal movement weaknesses or build stability across multiple planes the way the next one does. Exercise number 4, the Turkish get-up. Every exercise covered to this point rewards force production, driving the hips, pressing weight, squatting under load. The get-up operates on completely different terms. Starting flat on your back with a kettlebell locked out overhead, you move through 7 distinct stages to reach a full standing position and then reverse the entire sequence back to the floor, with 1 rep taking 30 seconds or more when performed with any real attention to detail. Clinicians do not just program the get-up for fitness. A 2019 case study documented its use as the primary rehabilitation tool for an acute shoulder injury in a competitive Brazilian jiu-jitsu athlete, where the exercise was not introduced after recovery was complete, but was the recovery itself. That context matters because it tells you something about the nature of the demand. The controlled multiplanar loading rebuilds shoulder capacity to stabilize across planes in a way that conventional rehabilitation exercises rarely approach. In 2018, Saint-Onge and colleagues ran an EMG study tracking shoulder muscle activity across all 7 stages of the get-up and found that the greatest demand landed on the press-to-elbow transition and the leg sweep, both moments where the working shoulder has to hold the load with no assistance from the opposite arm. And this is where it gets interesting. Activation patterns differed meaningfully between the ascending and descending phases, which led the researchers to conclude that training both directions is non-negotiable. Skipping the controlled descent cuts the stimulus in half. The core demand is equally specific. Your obliques, rectus abdominis, and erector spinae all coordinate to keep your ribcage connected to your pelvis while your body repositions itself underneath the kettlebell. And the moment that connection slips, the bell drifts off the vertical line above your wrist and the rep collapses. That kind of immediate feedback is rare in training. For older adults specifically, the Bell trial in 2022 tested kettlebell training in adults aged 59 to 79 and found that floor to standing transfer speed improved measurably after 3 months, and the ability to get up and down from the floor with control is consistently identified in research as one of the strongest markers of long-term functional independence. 4 patterns covered: hinge, squat, press, multiplanar stability. 1 gap remains. Exercise 5, the kettlebell snatch. The snatch sends the kettlebell from below the hips to fully overhead in a single explosive arc, bypassing the rack position entirely, and it looks from the outside like a swing with extra range. The metabolic data tells a different story. Dr. John Porcari led an ACE-funded study at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse that measured exactly what a 20-minute snatch workout does to the body using experienced kettlebell trainees performing 15-second work and rest intervals. Aerobic expenditure averaged 13.6 calories per minute, anaerobic contribution added 6.6 more, and combined that comes to roughly 20.2 calories per minute sustained across the full 20 minutes. Porcari said publicly the only comparable activity he could find was cross-country skiing uphill at a fast pace, and heart rate across the workout ranged from 86 to 99% of maximum. Near maximal cardiovascular effort held for 20 continuous minutes while the body is also managing overhead stabilization, grip endurance, and full body timing. The aerobic adaptation those numbers predict was confirmed by Falatic and colleagues in 2015, who tested a 4-week snatch protocol on female soccer players. VO2 max in the kettlebell group climbed by approximately 6%, while the circuit training control group showed no measurable change across the same time period. 4 weeks, 20-minute sessions, and the snatch outperformed a structured circuit program on the one metric that most directly reflects aerobic capacity. EMG research from Lyons and colleagues added another layer by directly comparing the swing, snatch, and clean, and finding that all 3 place distinctly different demands on the erector spinae, contralateral external oblique, and vastus lateralis. They are not the same movement at different lengths. The snatch asks for overhead stabilization at speed, grip endurance over high rep sets, and timing that swinging never requires, which means every rep is a full coordination event at near maximal output. 5 patterns are covered, but every movement in this program to this point either pushes or drives the hips forward, and nothing has pulled against resistance yet. Exercise 6, the kettlebell row. A program built entirely on pushing and hinging gradually builds an imbalance that shows up first in posture and eventually in the shoulder joint itself. And adding more pressing without ever pulling against load does not slow that process down. It speeds it up. The kettlebell row recruits every major pulling muscle in the upper body: lats, rhomboids, middle trapezius, rear deltoids, and biceps, through a full range of motion, and the structural difference from a barbell row shows up immediately in the setup. With the bell in one hand and a staggered stance, the obliques and deep spinal stabilizers engage to resist the rotational force pulling your torso sideways before the pull even begins. which means every rep simultaneously trains the horizontal pulling pattern and challenges the core to resist rotation. A cable machine or fixed barbell cannot replicate that combination. The row also directly counteracts what daily life does to the upper body. Desk work, driving, phone use. The default postures most people hold for the majority of their waking hours shorten the anterior musculature and allow the posterior chain of the upper back to go largely inactive. Scapular retraction, the act of drawing the shoulder blades together and holding them there against load, is what the row specifically trains. And that movement pattern is what keeps the upper back extended and the shoulders sitting in a position where pressing and overhead work do not accumulate risk over time. From a recovery standpoint, the row fills a slot nothing else in this program occupies. The swing, snatch, clean, and get up all place either ballistic or high neurological demands on the body in ways that accumulate fatigue across a training week. And the row delivers controlled, moderate intensity volume for the back without drawing from the same recovery reserves. That means you accumulate real training stimulus for the pulling muscles without pushing the overall weekly load into territory that compromises the other 5 exercises. 6 exercises, 6 movement patterns, nothing repeated and nothing missing. The swing covers the hinge, the goblet squat covers the squat, the clean and press covers the push, the get-up covers stability and mobility across multiple planes, the snatch covers metabolic conditioning, and the row covers the pull. Spread those 6 movements across 3 training days per week, pairing a ballistic movement with 1 or 2 grinds in each session. Day 1 runs swings, goblet squats, and get-ups. Day 2 runs clean and press, rows and swings as a conditioning finisher. Day 3 runs snatches, goblet squats, and get-ups. Ballistic movements like swings and snatches respond well to sets of 10 to 20 reps, while grinds like the goblet squat, clean, and press, and row respond better in the 5 to 8 rep range. Get-ups need only 1 to 3 reps per side. Perform slowly with full attention given to every transition. For progression, add reps first, then sets, then compress rest periods, and eventually move to a heavier bell. The clean and press works particularly well in ladders rather than straight sets. Press once per side, then twice, then 3 times. Rest briefly. Between rungs, run 3 to 5 complete ladders, and you accumulate 18 to 30 total reps without a single set that grinds your form into the ground. A 2024 study enrolled adults between 60 and 80 in twice-weekly kettlebell training, and after 6 months their muscle mass, grip strength, and leg strength had all increased measurably, with participants climbing stairs faster and rising from chairs with greater control after 12 months. Age shifts the starting point and the rate of progression. It does not change which exercises are worth doing. 30 to 45 minutes per session, 3 days a week, 1 kettlebell, every pattern covered. The research behind this list comes from peer-reviewed biomechanics labs, controlled intervention studies, and clinical rehabilitation settings. Keep overcomplicating your training or start with what the evidence has already settled.